Hi, welcome to Chili's.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning to you, wherever you are, because it is morning somewhere for June 18th, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns. Sitting right over there, she has given up on her dreams of long-range space travel. It's Ashley Burns. How you doing, Ash?
My kidneys just can't take it.
Listen, shrinking kidneys are a huge problem.
That's what she said.
I don't think she ever said that. I don't think she has a medical degree.
She was like, "Oh, it's cold in space."
Sir, this is a very serious medical diagnosis.
Sir, this is a Chili's.
How you doing, Ash? How you doing?
Yeah, hanging in there. How about yourself?
So I'm doing well. The opening drop there was from Vine. And this got me thinking about two things. First of all, was Vine, pound for pound, was it the best social media platform ever?
Ooh, that's hard to say. I would say it was the right thing at the wrong time.
Because it was short form video when people weren't really ready for short form video?
Yeah, not that necessarily people weren't ready because people enjoyed consuming it, but almost like the ecosystem wasn't there yet. Like, remember when Vine came out? It wasn't like monetized or anything, right?
Yeah,
so
nope.
there wasn't a way to just like run ads against your content and make some money off it the way that people have since been able to do on things like YouTube. And since, now a lot of the video platforms do have something like that. And so if Vine creators made any money, it was by doing their own brand integrations and ad sales, right? And while that is a lot more common now, it was not at the time. And so it was a lot harder for those creators to make any kind of money.
Also, fighting retired boxers turned out to be a very lucrative business model for Vine stars.
And here's
unexplored at the time.
Here's the best part. You don't even have to fight them. You just have to talk their ulcers into fighting them for you.
I would like to see Amanda Cerny go up against like Ronda Rousey. that would be pretty amazing. But yeah, I always thought Vine was it has kind of a sweet spot where it has so many bangers, like because of its short form nature, right? And it was incredible for the time of like people being able to tell a joke in 6 seconds. We did Vines. We came on. It's always interesting when you join a platform a little bit late. We had this with Patreon. We had to have this workaround where we weren't constantly emailing people. And then they finally, 2 weeks into our Patreon journey, they had a little button where you could just say, don't notify people when you make a post, right?
Right, yes.
Because we didn't want to spam people's email boxes. Apparently, all the Patreon creators before us had to constantly spam their supporters, their patrons.
Or figure out the same workaround that we had figured out in order to avoid notifying people by email every single time you make a post.
Do you remember what that was for Vine that we got lucked into that didn't exist when we first started making Vines?
Editing.
You couldn't edit the videos. You had to record everything in the phone take by take. Didn't you even have to like hold your thumb on the screen?
You did. I remember this. So Rooster Teeth did a series of Vines. It was a lot of fun. You wrote all the Vines. I shot most of them.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
And it was... God, how many times did we have to redo some of those, like with the birthday cake? Oh my God. The pressure on the birthday cake one was out of this world to get it just right from a filming perspective because, as you said, you couldn't really edit. And we had a finite amount of cake.
Yeah, we did. We had a finite amount of cake. But they had so many bangers, and then they also went away. They did the mic drop and left, or collapsed would probably be more accurate business analysis. But then they immediately got the nostalgia. Like people remember, they have a nostalgia for Vine that they didn't necessarily have for TikToks.
And here's the other thing about it, about the nostalgia, right, is you remember it and you only remember the really good stuff, the really top tier stuff.
True. All the compilations are basically the same thing. Of course, it is locked in time as well. But really quickly, the other thing I was thinking about is Elon Musk is constantly talking about how to increase monetization on Twitter. They recently, not a monetization thing, but they recently turned off all likes, made them visible, so you can't see likes now on the platform. They made another announcement that seemed to fly really under the radar, which is it's now okay for all adult content to be on Twitter. Like they're fine with that, which I don't get how they're getting away with that because actually when we ran websites, there was this thing called COPA, which is the Child Online
Oh my
Protection
God.
Act, which was
It was serious business.
yeah, it was compliance with that was a lot of work.
And that was one of those things too, where you had to like, check that the people signing up were at least, it was, I can't remember I want to say it was 13. The age might have been 12, but it was anything outside that you had to have like parents send, at the time it was probably like fax in permission forms, that kind of thing. It was like very stringent. COPA was taken very, very seriously. And if you weren't compliant, you were in big trouble.
Yeah, it is. 13's weird. It is like the low watermark for age, but I feel like the social media companies just kind of came up with that on their own.
Kind of like the MPAA, like we'll police ourselves. Thank you.
Yeah,
Hands
exactly.
off.
Yeah, keep you off of us, like the way the FCC was constantly going after radio and TV. The Motion Picture Association said, hey, we're going to handle this ourselves. Comics, I think, did the same thing with the Comics Authority, where they had a self-policing and self-regulation kind of organization that kept the government off their backs. Did you also read, by the way, the Surgeon General now has recommended putting a warning on social media networks?
What, like
akin to what's on cigarettes.
So the loading screen is just going to have like a parental advisory, like parental advisory may cause problems with attention, and you might learn way too much about certain topics.
You know what? I think would do it, honestly, is how like on UK cigarettes, they put horrible images of just lungs and diseased hearts and stuff. And
yes, I'm very well
It's
aware.
horrifying. What they could do on a social media network as a warning is just turn on the front-facing camera for 3 seconds, and you'd be like, I don't want to. Is that what I look like looking at this stuff? Yeah, and then you would turn it off immediately. Just catch yourself with like your dead eyes, your mouth slightly agape, going.
Well, isn't that kind of what they call the black mirror?
Oh my God.
The mirror is the screen off, reflecting back at you in the worst way.
Tell me that's not where the phrase "black mirror" comes
I think
from.
it is.
That's amazing. I didn't know that till right now. Even if that's not true, I'm going to believe that. And that I didn't know that's where the term "black mirror" comes from.
Yeah.
It's the screen reflecting you.
The digital void staring back.
That's what a great term. I never knew that. But yeah, so why not bring back Vine if you're Elon Musk? And why not put it on Twitter again?
I think
Could it work in this day and age?
I think he's alluded to considering doing so, but Vine is one of those things where you can't necessarily make lightning strike twice. And now there are other things in the space that are, I would say, more established. And they did try to do a sequel to Vine. I think they tried to make a Vine 2. It didn't quite work. And they ended up rebranding it as something called Byte. And that came out in maybe beginning of 2020, something like that. And have you heard about it since?
Can't say that I have. Maybe I'm not giving good business advice here to a guy that's somehow just convinced Tesla shareholders to give him, what, $50 billion or something like that?
Oh, no, Bernie, you're off a little bit. It was $56 billion.
What's $6 billion?
give or
between
take,
people?
give or take 6 billions.
My new business model will be I'm just going to be like, do a bunch of Vine compilations. I can be the narrator for the Vine generation.
Look, you can do that because, okay, so as you know, I've been watching Bridgerton, and I've just finished.
How did you get to Bridgerton? All roads lead to Bridgerton.
Every single one. I've just finished watching the 3rd season of the show. And one of the things about the setup of the show, you talk about narrators, right? So the show is narrated by this character, Lady Whistledown, who writes this gossip paper.
When I said narrator, lots of shows have narrators. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yes, that's true. But it got me thinking. This one got me thinking. The voice of Lady Whistledown is narrated by Julie Andrews, I think it is. And there was another show that was set up similarly called Gossip Girl, and I believe the voice of Gossip Girl was Kristen Bell. But there's
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
I didn't know that. I never watched the show.
So there's been a couple shows like this, right, where there's a character narrating what happens to all the characters in the show. I think, wasn't Arrested Development, that was Ron Howard, right?
Yeah, it was Ron Howard on Arrested Development. I was thinking of How I Met Your Mother was Bob Saget.
Oh,
right?
really?
Yeah, it was Bob Saget. I believe so. And back in the day, Wonder Years had Daniel Stern, who was one of the wet bandits from Home Alone, the tall guy.
We're the wet bandits.
It would be funny if Joe Pesci had narrated Wonder Years, though. That'd have been funny.
Well, okay, so this brings me to the question I've been thinking about. If you had the TV show of your life, who's narrating it?
My life?
Yes.
John Madden. That's the only thing I can
Is that
come
like
up with.
Ultimate hype man?
Charles Barkley just retired, so maybe Charles Barkley.
Okay, all right, he's free. I was thinking Jennifer Coolidge.
For you?
Yeah.
Really? What did Charlize Theron or so? Jennifer Coolidge?
Jennifer Coolidge. I'll be like spreading toast on jam, and she'll be like, "That looks delicious.
That's fantastic.
That looks like that looks like the 4th of July." You know, what's not to love about Jennifer Coolidge narrating your life?
Well, while you mentioned Charles Barkley retiring, can I do some sports news really quickly?
Yeah, sure.
So, if you are keeping score at home, your Celtics of Boston just won the NBA championship. I was looking at their playoff run. It was actually pretty freaking stellar. They swept the Dallas Mavericks. They didn't sweep. They beat the Mavericks in 5 games, 4-1. But over the course of their playoff run, they never lost more than 1 game in any series. They swept the Pacers in the conference finals. They only lost 1 game to the Cavaliers and only lost 1 game to the Heat. So congratulations to the Celtics for a stellar run to the championship.
That is pretty impressive.
Also, the NHL playoffs are going on right now, and it looks like the Panthers could be in the same position as the Celtics, where they could sweep their opponent. Keep saying sweep. They could beat their opponent 4-1 as they face off against the Edmonton Oilers for the Stanley Cup.
All right. Well, that's something exciting across the pond.
I need to call Tyler Coe and work on my sports reporting.
Look, it's a full sweep across the pond. England fans are doing their best to get into the sport, except it's the sport of drinking. Bernie, I read this headline that England fans have downed 2 months worth of beer in 1 weekend at a Gelsenkirchen restaurant. So England fans
2 months worth of beer in Germany
in 1 weekend. Yes, so they descended on this restaurant in Germany.
Wow.
In this town called Gelsenkirchen. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not.
I think you nailed it.
And it was an Italian restaurant. That normally says they go through about two kegs of beer in a weekend, and they went through 60.
60 kegs in a weekend.
60 kegs with these England fans. So England fans are making drinking their sport of choice.
That sounds like a lot of beer to me, 60 kegs.
Adds that to about 7,500 pints.
Is that it?
Apparently.
So there's like 100 pints, a little bit more than 100 pints per keg?
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought more, but what do I know about kegs?
Also, 7,500 pints sounds like 7,500 people had a pint. Like how many English fans are there?
How many people fit in a restaurant in 2 days? I mean, come on, man.
Oh, I see. It's one restaurant. I got you. Okay.
Yeah, this was one restaurant.
Okay.
They went through 60 kegs in one restaurant in 1 weekend. That to me is pretty impressive. I think England is going to sweep it.
That was one of those.
The restaurant said that next up there's fans in town for an Italy versus Spain game, and they were like, yeah, they'll probably drink, but no one drinks like the British.
Yeah, that's all wine too, right? Spain and Italy, that's going to be all wine. I think.
How dare you?
Did you know there's a rule, by the way, that you can't drink a cappuccino after 11 a.m.? That's a thing.
Well, I'm going to break that rule because I like a good cappuccino.
We break that rule all the time.
Every single day, baby.
All the time. Can you imagine Starbucks shutting at 11 a.m.?
I mean, like, if you order a cappuccino, they're like, no.
There's been times
Absolutely
where
not.
I've gone by a Starbucks. It's like 3:30 p.m. and I'm like, I'm gonna stop in and get something, and they're closed. And then I'm mad about it. And then I realized, oh no, this is for my own good. Like, it's a good thing that they were closed at this point in time. Because if I drink coffee after about 1 p.m., Ashley, you've seen me go through this so many times. I'll be sitting there about 5 o'clock, and I'm like, something's really wrong with me right now. And it's always the exact same thing. I drank coffee at like 2 p.m. and I just can't do it. And I can't figure out why I'm all jittery and weird at 5 p.m.
Yeah, well, that is a problem with your body.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of problems with bodies, Bernie, there's a problem with 3 bodies.
That was a good segue.
Thank you. So I have to ask you about this because you're the subject matter expert.
Hello.
There's just been, you watched the Netflix adaptation of the 3 Body Problem book, of which the series is called, remind me?
The Remembrance of Earth's Past.
All right, rolls right off the tongue.
Earth's being a possessive, not
Got it.
multiple Earths.
So Netflix has just concluded the first season of what is to be a 3-season show of adapting that series.
Theoretically, yeah.
Theoretically. Previously, there was, I think, a TV show adaptation out of China. Now, they've just announced there's going to be a 3 Body Problem movie directed by someone named Zhang Yimou, who I'm unfamiliar with. But my question is, this seems like an incredibly meaty source material, like there's a lot to it. Is a movie even possible?
No, yeah. A movie's totally possible. I mean, it's a trilogy of books, and you can always make, I think, a trilogy of movies out of a trilogy of books. You know, it's when they take one book and try to turn it into a trilogy that things go awry.
I can't imagine what you'd be talking about.
I can't imagine what I'm talking about either. Yeah, the weird thing to me is, so Three Body Problem came out in like the mid 2000s, like 2005 or 2006.
Okay.
And really just kind of like started to build this following. And now suddenly they've got 2 television series essentially and a movie coming out all within like 3 or 4 years of each other. It feels like. Is this one of the most adapted pieces of material in the shortest amount of time ever?
Well, when you add the shortest amount of time qualifier, possibly that, or I mean, you're talking. I mean, how many times did Spider-Man get rebooted?
Spider-Man. I was thinking Romeo and Juliet.
Well, you're saying shortest amount of time. If you want to just like go like balls to the wall, brute numbers, then yes, I would say Romeo and Juliet is probably one of the big ones. But like Spider-Man got rebooted like 3 times in 10 years.
We're talking about fictional stuff here. So look, you can eliminate the Bible, which has been adapted a ton of different times. Most adapted story ever.
I'm going to say that probably something Shakespeare. Romeo and Juliet's a good contender because that one's so well known.
I would think so. I think that's up there.
I'm going to put forward Jane Austen.
I'm going to come up. My dark horse in this is going to be Tarzan.
Interesting
Yeah.
one. Okay. Well, mine for Jane Austen is because there have been a lot of indirect adaptations. So like, do you remember the Alicia Silverstone movie? It was Clueless.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I think, a retelling of Emma, which is the Jane Austen. And there've been obviously a billion Pride and Prejudices and things like that. But that one, like, there've also been then adaptations by another name, if that makes sense, where they're telling that story, but they're freshening it up for a new modern audience.
Yeah, it's like a heavily inspired by, right? Like they follow the beats of the story, but not necessarily a straight retelling of it.
Right. But that happens with a lot of things. I mean, even,
Sure.
you get a lot of like even stage productions for things now. We're like, we're doing this, but we're sort of like redoing, we're putting our own spin on this thing. We're telling it to a new audience.
You know what I think would affect this too is there's so many things that we're talking about, like Tarzan and some Jane Austen and Shakespeare, which they get adapted a lot because they're in the public domain. Like there's a reason why so many kids in high school are in Shakespearean plays. It's because they don't have to pay any royalties in order to use those scripts, And so it can affect how often something gets used.
I guess that's true. There's I think I remember reading earlier this year that some Agatha Christie stuff's been hitting public domain. So maybe we'll see more of that stuff coming up.
And it's an adaptation, so there's lots of different, gray areas involved with this, of whether it qualifies or not. Like I'm trying to look up every Tarzan movie ever made.
Best of luck.
It's not the same story every time, but it's the character. So would that count?
Are you going to count George of the Jungle?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I'm going to count George of the Jungle. Why not all the movies of the Planet of the Apes as well? But the Three Body Problem road to the screen, either big or small, is a wild one. Did you ever read about everything that took place there was a gaming like tycoon who developed, I want to say like a mobile game for Game of Thrones. He fell in love with the books, got the rights to it, tried to turn it into a movie, and then hired an executive to run the company to get it to the screen. That guy got ousted at some point and then came back and poisoned everybody at the office and ended up killing the gaming tycoon as part of it before the movies and the television series ever made it to the screen.
Yes, I do remember this happening. So, so this is from an article. This is from USA Today. And this is producer's death surrounds Netflix's Three Body Problem. So this is a 2020 poisoning. A former gaming executive was sentenced to death last month in China for fatally poisoning Ling Qi, a billionaire whose Yuzu games had links to Three Body Problem on Netflix. So it says Zhu had become disgruntled after he felt sidelined within the company and set about on a murderous plot to exact revenge on Lin and others within Yuzu games, also known as Yuzu Interactive. Zhu Yao was arrested in 2020, shortly after Lin Ke, the founder of the high-profile Chinese gaming company known as Yuzu Games, was poisoned to death at the age of 39. He was found guilty of murder March 22nd, the day after Three Body Problem premiered on Netflix. So how's that timing for marketing?
Yeah, that's crazy. And it was weird. I feel like they kind of suppressed the story when it was coming out, but then once it was out, everyone was talking about it. That's a really crazy story. He's sentenced to death now, right? The guy that poisoned him.
Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah,
sentenced to death. Yes, that's correct.
Oh, right. We're going a little bit long here, but while we're talking about crazy stories coming out of China, there's one that I have to talk about here. You got to talk about Bridgerton, so I'm going to talk about the male version of Bridgerton.
Which is, go ahead.
It's AI-powered sex bots.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Chinese scientists and engineers are applying ChatGPT-like technology to sex robots, aiming to create interactive artificial intelligence-powered companions in the face of technical and actually ethical challenges. And they're talking about how they just want them to be more interactive so you can build more of an emotional bond. And according to the CEO, Evan Lee, we are developing a next-generation sex doll that can interact vocally and physically with users, with prototypes expected by August of this year.
That's pretty quick.
They're coming. They're coming fast.
Are they coming?
How dare you? This is low-hanging fruit. I always think when I read this is, of course, that's going to be one of the first things, one of the first applications for this. I mean, even the movie Her explored that. It was, it wasn't necessarily sexual in nature. There was some, elements of that, but it was more of companionship. But it's going to be a big part of it, as people get more siloed and lonely. And it just makes me think, at some point, we're going to have to remake Terminator, because with the rise of AI, it really would be when AI comes into existence, it's whatever technology exists at the time is going to be what it uses against us. So it really is not going to be like soldiers with metal skeletons like hunting us down. It's going to be sex robots and robot vacuums. That's what we should have chasing us through time.
They never
to kill John Connor.
They never expect the Roomba Inquisition. But no, you know who predicted this, Bernie? This is the fembots. You're talking about fembots from Austin Powers.
Oh yeah,
remember they're in their lovely like little pink nighties, and then just like boobs open and their miniguns.
Who knew Mike Myers was such a futurist? He nailed it. He absolutely nailed it. Wow, I'll have to go back and watch that now for research purposes.
Well, before we go, I'd like to thank our personal Terminators, James Boydston, Nick Ousted, and Griffin Queen. Thank you so much for sponsoring this episode of Morning Somewhere at patreon.com/Morning Somewhere.
And one quick little last current event before we go. We would like to wish a very speedy recovery to Sir Ian McKellen, who actually at 85 years of age was still performing on stage, but then somehow fell off the stage and went to the hospital, got a clean bill of health from the NHS, and was perfectly fine. Can you imagine that? Rebounding from something like that at 85? All right, well, that does it for us today, June 18th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.